Good morning, Year 9. I hope you're well. Welcome to Friday's lesson, where we are going to continue reading Romeo and Juliet, and we are finally going to analyse the first meeting of Romeo and Juliet. So, could we please pause the video and copy down the title, date, and learning objective? Press play when you've got those three things down, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you are ready to complete the Do Now task. Make sure you answer these 5 questions based on Act 1 Scene 4 in full sentences, please. Pause the video and get those done now. Okay, if you're back, that means you're ready to make your purple pen corrections. Here are the answers on screen. These should all be very familiar to you if you understood and kind of took in the content from the lesson on Act 1 Scene 4. But please do take the opportunity now to pause the video and make any purple pen corrections that you need to. So let's have a look at the events of Act 1, Scene 5. So Romeo, Mercutio, Benvolio, and some of the other Montagues attend the Capulet feast. Almost instantly, Romeo sees Juliet and falls in love with her, love at first sight. Unfortunately, Tybalt recognises Romeo's voice and he sends to get his sword so he can kill Romeo. However, this kind of violent outburst is prevented because Capulet insists that Tybalt behaves himself. He reminds Tybalt that Romeo is in fact a good man and that they need to keep the peace in light of the prince's warning. Romeo and Juliet are just kind of in a world of their own. They continue their exchanges of affection and they share their first kiss. But they are interrupted by the nurse who sends Juliet to find her mother. While she is gone, Romeo asks the nurse who Juliet is. He's keen to know this woman so he can find her again. And when he discovers that she is in fact a Capulet from the enemy family, he realises the grave consequences of their love. We know those consequences, and now Romeo does too. The feast closes and Romeo leaves with the fellow Montagues. At this point, Juliet discovers from the nurse that Romeo is a Montague. So we kind of have a roller coaster of emotions here. We have fear and violence at the beginning, then we have kind of love and elation, and then we kind of go back to this kind of fear and shock as they realise the consequences of their love. So today we are going to focus on analysing methods. So what I would like you to do is copy this table out, making sure that you have space for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quotes and 5 matching pieces of analysis. I recommend that you use over half a page, depending on how big your writing is. Pause the video and get this table copied down now, please. Okay, so you should have this table down and we're going to start reading Act 1, Scene 5. I'm going to analyse and annotate loads of quotes. There's going to be more than 5 quotations that I'm going to annotate, and it's up to you to choose which ones that stand out to you that you think that you can analyse, and you can jot those into the table. There's going to be 4 slides, and on those 4 slides they're going to be pieces of text, and from those slides there's probably going to be about 10 quotes that I'm going to analyse. So what I recommend is that you watch me read and watch me annotate, and then you can go back through and complete this table. Please don't get carried away and complete this table within the first couple of minutes of me reading the scene, because you will have no room to fill in the table with quotes from later in the scene. So let's get into it. I'll read it for you first, and then we'll kind of unpick it in a bit more detail. Romeo says, "Oh, she doth teaches the torches to burn bright." This is his kind of instant reaction to seeing Juliet. "It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night, as a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear. Beauty too rich for use, for earth too dear. So shows a snowy dove trooping with crows, as yonder lady over her fellow shows. The measure done, I'll watch her place of stand, and touching hers make blessed my rude hand. Did my heart love till now? Forswear its sight, for I never saw true beauty till this night." So let's unpick this. So At the beginning, instantly, kind of Romeo declares his attraction, and he says that Juliet is so beautiful that she needs to teach the torches to burn brighter like her. So this is kind of, you could say, an introduction to the hyperbole that is threaded throughout this scene, that this exaggerated language to describe their love for one another. And this line in particular is a metaphor for Juliet's beauty and radiance. She is so beautiful and so radiant that she needs to teach the torches to burn brighter. And arguably, she almost exists as a light that will free Romeo from his metaphorical darkness. We then have the line, "It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night as a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear." So the idea here is that she stands out against the darkness like a jeweled earring hanging against the cheek of someone from Ethiopia. So here we have this contrast again between night, kind of light and dark, to solidify Juliet's beauty. And that simile, comparing her to a jewel, almost emphasizes how kind of almost rare and precious she is, as well as emphasizing her beauty. Then he continues to say, "Beauty too rich for use, for earth too dear." He says her beauty is too good for this world. She's too beautiful to die and be buried. So this is foreshadowing. We know that Juliet is going to die. We know the pair are going to die as a result of their love. And this line foreshadows that she is too precious to be attracted, but to be, kind of gaining this attraction from Romeo, and this idea that she is kind of too dear for Earth, this ominous atmosphere. So we're going to write foreshadows death, and then we're going to write ominous atmosphere. It's kind of an interjection, a negative interjection amongst all of this beautiful hyperbolic language to describe his love for her. Then he continues to say, "So shows a snowy dove trooping with crows, as yonder lady over her fellows show." He basically says that she outshines the other woman like a white dove in the middle of a flock of crows. And comparing this metaphor to describe Juliet as a snowy dove, again, there's this contrast between light and dark. And that is something that is consistent throughout this scene. Contrast between light, and that does not look like an L, and dark. The snowy dove, her pale, beautiful skin against the kind of darkness of the room. And this metaphor therefore shows kind of how superior her beauty is. Metaphor for her superior beauty. We then continue on, and Romeo says, "The measure done, I'll watch her place of stand, and touching hers make blessed my rude hand." He says, when the dance is over, I'm going to go and speak to her, and I'm going to touch her hand with my rough and ugly one. Almost this idea that he doesn't even feel suitable for her because she's this precious jewel that is too rich for use. He then says, "Did my heart love till now, forswear its sight, for I never saw true beauty till this night." He questions whether he's ever known true love, and that his eyes have been lying to him for being in love with Rosaline. And he says that he's never seen true beauty until he's seen Juliet. So here, did my heart love till now? Oh, let me grab the highlighter. Did my heart love till now? That is a kind of, a rhetorical question where he questions his almost own irrationality, and also foreshadows, it also highlights the instant love and desire. So let me grab the red pen there. So I'm just going to write rhetorical question shows instant desire. And then we also have this final line here for I never saw true beauty till this lie. And this shows where kind of Romeo falls into this almost kind of male perspective of love, where he equates love to beauty. If someone is beautiful, chances are he's going to love them. So there's a lot to unpick here. It's also worth mentioning the rhymes and the rhyming couplet, which makes this speech a sonnet. So bright night, ear, dear, crows, shows, stand, hand, and then sight and night again, which is also rhyming with the first couplet. So this sonnet form, we know from the prologue, is a form of love poetry. So it only emphasises Romeo's passion for Juliet even further. So at this point, you might want to pause the video and get some quotes down, but I recommend that you wait until the end of the video because we're going to analyse a couple more now. Okay, so this is when they meet and they're chatting, and this is what is said. Romeo says to Juliet, if I profane with my unworthiest hand this holy shrine, the gentle sin is this. My lips, two blushing pilgrims, ready stand to smooth that rough touch with a tender kiss. So here he says, your hand is like a holy place that my hand is unworthy to visit. He says that if you're offended by the touch of my hand, my two lips, which he describes as blushing pilgrims, are ready to make things better with a kiss. And there is a lot of religious imagery here, and we're going to unpick that in a little bit. Juliet kind of continues with this religious imagery and says, good pilgrim, you do wrong your hand too much, which mannerly devotion shows in this. For saints have hands that pilgrims' hands do touch, and palm to palm is holy palmer's kiss. Again, notice the rhyme scheme and the sonnet form here, the poetry, kind of in their conversation. It's inherent in the way that they are communicating with each other. This could be indicating their almost instant union. They're in touch with one another. Juliet here says, you don't give your hand enough credit. Your hand is beautiful. He says, by holding my hand, you show your devotion. And she says, after all, pilgrims touch the hands of statues and of saints. Holding one palm against another is like a kiss. So she kind of establishes that this physical interaction between them isn't meaningless and is meaningful to her. Romeo says, have not saint lips and holy palmers too? He says, don't saints and pilgrims have lips too? Basically, he's trying to persuade her to give him a kiss. She says, I pilgrim, lips that they must use in prayer. She tries to kind of swerve his interactions here, and she says, yes, pilgrim, they have lips that they're supposed to pray with, not kiss. And Romeo says, oh then, dear saint, let lips do what hands do. They pray, grant thou, lest faith turn to despair. He says, well then, and refers to her as a saint, let lips do what our hands do. I'm praying for you to kiss me. So he kind of plays on her words here and says, please grant my prayer so my faith doesn't turn to despair. So there's quite a few things to unpick here, and they're kind of almost broken down into three different kind of categories. So we have a lot of religious imagery. We have the idea of a holy shrine, we have sins, pilgrims, saints, pilgrims, again, saints, pilgrims, saints, faith, prayer, holy, holy. There's a lot of religious imagery here. And I'm just going to kind of make a little key up here. So Italy was quite kind of, it was like the centre of the Catholic religion, incredibly religious. And that could, argue that that is the reason behind this religious imagery. Ultimately here, it kind of establishes that their love is almost kind of sacred and pure, and that Juliet is this kind of goddess-like figure in his life, and Romeo is this kind of pilgrim that's trying to erase his sins by engaging in, an act of love with Juliet. However, this might have not been very well received by the audience. Like I just mentioned, the Catholic religion was at the forefront of Italy at this time, and that kind of, underpinned a lot of their beliefs and their mannerisms. So the fact that, Juliet is being compared to a goddess and an angel, and their love is kind of being presented as something that's sacred and pure, is almost blasphemy, is almost an absolute disrespect to the power of God and saints and angels and the religion itself. Arguably, this blasphemy in this religious imagery could indicate, the irrationality of Romeo and Juliet's love. They haven't taken a step back to consider their actions and the consequences of these actions. We also have kind of another group of phrases. There's a lot of references to language in the semantic field of affection. So we have lips, we have blushing, we have kiss, we have devotion, and this idea of also the lips is kind of continued throughout. Remember, a semantic field is a group of words that are different, but they kind of share a common meaning. So this kind of semantic field of affection. That's meant to say semantic field of. So let me just fix that. Semantic field of love and affection. And then kind of the final thing that I would like to pick out of this scene is all of these references to hands and, let me pick a different colour. It's not very useful. So we have hand, we have this idea of like touching hands the whole way through. It's literally embedded, like the religious imagery, throughout. We have the palms, again we have the hands, kind of this reference to palms again there, like the word play. And this imagery of the hands is repeated throughout. Repetition of the same words being hand and palm. And this repetition, let me just make it red so it's the same. I'm just going to write repetition. It almost creates this kind of sense of unity and almost togetherness. They're like binding themselves through the act of holding hands, and again also linked to the religious image of praying. There's a lot to kind of unpick here in their language. And this only continues throughout the scene. We are going to skip a little bit because basically they just go on talking about sins and lips and prayers and palms and hands, and then they end up kissing. So, it's almost a little bit unnecessary. So then this is where Juliet leaves, and Romeo is with the nurse, and Romeo asks what is her mother, basically who is her mother. Nurse says, Mary, bachelor, her mother is the lady of the house, and a good lady, and a wise and virtuous. Romeo says, is she a Capulet? Oh dear account, my life is my foe's debt. So she basically says Juliet's mother is a lady of the house, Lady Capulet, who is, wise and virtuous. Romeo kind of repeats this in absolute disbelief, and he says, oh, this is basically, dear account, this is a heavy price to pay. My life is in the hands of my enemy. Benvolio says, basically, away be gone, the sport is at the best, let's go, the fun's over. And Romeo says, so I fear the more is my unrest. He says, yes, but I'm afraid I'm in more trouble than ever. So this is where Romeo realizes the kind of gravity and the severity of his actions tonight. So I kind of want to unpick this line here. My life is my foe's debt, and it's almost this idea that Romeo's kind of at the mercy of the Capulets. Now he feels his love is so strong that he almost feels helpless, and now his actions and his life is determined by the Capulets. Almost the idea that his fate is in their hands due to his love. And the reference of life here could be again a kind of reference to death, and the death that will be brought about by their union. Then we have a kind of similar interaction between Juliet and the nurse. Juliet says, go ask his name. If he be married, my grave is likely to be my wedding bed. She basically says, go and find out who he is. I want to know what his name is. If he's married, I think I'd rather die than marry anyone else. We'll talk about that in a second. Nurse says his name is Romeo and he's a Montague, the only son of your great enemy. And then Juliet says, my only love sprung from my only hate. She basically says, this is the only man that I love, and he is the son of the only man that I hate. She says, too early seen unknown and known too late. I saw him too early without knowing who he was, and I found out who he was far too late. Basically, I fell in love with him too quickly. She says, prodigious birth of love is it to me that I must love a loathed enemy. She says that love is like a monster for making me fall in love with my worst enemy. So there's a little bit to unpick here. My grave is likely to be my wedding bed, and also my only love sprung from my only hate. So this line about your grave being your wedding bed is ironic because we know that this is the case, and it again foreshadows her death. It's very interesting that both of them kind of make references to life and death. This almost self-awareness that their love is going to cause problems, but they're going to continue with it anyway. And it's ironic because we know that this is going to happen, that she's going to die as a result of her love. And this line here, my only love sprung from my only hate. Now, this is something that we call antithesis. Some people say antithesis, but it's pronounced antithesis. Now, antithesis is a kind of a phrase that has two parts, and those two parts are directly in contrast. So here we have the split here. This first half, my only love sprung, is basically the only man I love. And then the second half here is from my only hate, from the only man I hate. So the only man I love and the only man I hate, they are in opposition. They are in direct contrast. They are the antithesis here. And this antithesis could arguably be highlighting the kind of almost relation between love and hate, and how love isn't smooth, and it causes sometimes, especially in this text, more problems than it does solutions. Also, the repetition of the word only almost highlights how, unfortunate this situation is for Juliet. She realised that it's an absolute tragedy that she has fallen so deeply and so quickly in love with this man from a family that she has hated. So what I recommend that you do now, if you haven't done so already, is kind of go through the reading of Act 1, Scene 5 and complete that table. Everything that you need is on the screen and in the audio, so it shouldn't take you too long to complete that table. Come back after you have completed that, and we are going to then write a paragraph. Okay, if you're back, that means you have that table completed and you are now ready to copy this title down for our paragraph. Pause the video and copy the title down now, please. Okay, so you are going to use your table and this structure to write an analytical paragraph based on one of the quotes we have analysed today. Remember to use the new structure of a two-idea sentence and focus on your analysis of methods. So for step 4 here, when it says analyse word, method or tone, you are going to analyse a method, and then your second piece of analysis can be tone or word, depending on what you prefer. Pause the video and complete the analytical paragraph now. I recommend that you time yourself. This paragraph shouldn't take you longer than about 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, if you're back, that means you've completed this paragraph. I hope it didn't take you too long. And now you're ready to submit. Make sure you submit both parts of your work, the table, the do now, as well as your paragraph, so I can have a look at that. Pause the video so you can have this on screen to remind you about how I would like you to submit your work. Once you've sent it to my email, you can X out the video and continue with your lessons. Well done for another week of remote learning. Have an excellent weekend, and I will speak to you in the next video.